Okay, get this. Today we're driving deep into 2025 prophecies. Buckle up, because things are about to get a little wild.
I know, right? It's like, are these glimpses into what might actually happen? Or is it all just like wishful thinking? Or maybe fear mongering?
It's a cosmic mystery novel, for sure.
Yeah.
And in this episode, we've got a whole cast of characters. We've got comic book artists with precognitive dreams, self-proclaimed time travelers, remote viewers, psychics.
Hmm.
It's a lot.
Sounds like it. So, where do we even begin with all this?
Well, let's kick things off in Japan. We've got this fascinating story about a comic book artist who says she can see the future in her dreams.
Okay, hold on. Comic books and future predictions. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So this artist, she's been keeping a dream journal for decades, right? And she's noticed this pattern where things from her dreams actually end up happening like 5 days, 5 months, even 5 years later.
A five-fold pattern. That's creepy. So, what she dreamt about 2025?
Oh, this is where it gets intense. She describes this massive underwater explosion right in the triangle formed by Japan, the Philippines, and Taiwan.
Whoa, underwater explosion? What would even cause something like that?
She doesn't know for sure, but she describes seeing these crazy dragon-like cloud formations in the sky after the explosion. Like, maybe there's something more to it than just natural forces.
Dragon-like clouds. Okay, this is getting interesting, but I mean, an explosion that big, that's got to be some serious damage.
Oh yeah, we're talking colossal.
Yeah.
Like a huge crack in the ocean floor, lava spewing everywhere, and a tsunami with waves 100 meters high.
100 meters.
100 meters. She even says a third of Japan could disappear.
Uh-huh.
And get this, she sees a new continent forming where the explosion happened.
Wow. I mean, that's both terrifying and kind of mind-blowing at the same time. But how does she know this is all happening in 2025 specifically?
Well, she actually gives a specific date, July 5th, 2025. Mark your calendars, folks.
Okay, July 5th, 2025. Got it. But back to the cause, like what could trigger an explosion of that magnitude?
Right. It's got to be something huge. We're talking massive earthquakes, maybe an asteroid impact, or even, something man-made.
Oh, man-made. You think like a hydrogen bomb.
It's possible. Some folks even speculate about some top-secret antimatter experiments going wrong. I even checked NASA's asteroid tracker, and there's nothing big headed our way in 2025, so who knows?
So it's a mystery, but this artist, she has other dreams that might give us clues, right?
You bet. And this is where things get even weirder. Like she has this one dream where she's back in her childhood home after a tsunami hits Yokohama, and she sees a clock, but it's broken, frozen at either 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. Spooky, right?
Yeah, that's a little creepy. So July 5th, maybe around 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. Something to watch out for, I guess.
And in the same dream, she's walking through these empty streets and she ends up on this massive overpass that leads to ships, and they're packed with people from all over the world.
So maybe an evacuation, like people trying to escape the disaster.
Maybe. And get this, her dream about the underwater explosion. It happened at 4:18 in the morning.
So we've got July 5th, maybe 4:1 a.m. or 5 a.m. or 5 p.m.
Right, and then there's another dream where she sees a funeral happening on July 15th, 2025, and she thinks it might be her own funeral.
Wow, that's intense. So maybe this is like a timeline, a potential sequence of events. July 5th, the explosion, then maybe some kind of evacuation, and then a funeral 10 days later.
It's certainly a possibility. But before we get too caught up in this one artist's vision, let's see if any other 2025 prophecies back up these ideas of massive geological events and, well, societal chaos.
Yeah, good point. So what else have you dug up in your research?
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. We've got a self-proclaimed time traveler who
Mhm.
says he's been to 2025, and what he saw in the U.S. lines up with the Japanese artist's prophecy in a pretty unsettling way.
A time traveler. Okay, you've got my attention. This should be good. Tell me everything. Okay, a time traveler, huh? So what did this time traveler actually see in 2025?
Well, he claims that a third of the U.S. is underwater.
A third of the U.S. submerged.
Yep, like massive flooding. He even has a map showing the East Coast completely underwater. Cities like New York, Boston, Washington, D.C., all gone.
Okay, so that's pretty similar to what the comic book artist was talking about, right? With Japan and the new continent. Lots of water, lots of changes to the land.
It's a pretty consistent theme, isn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if there's something to it, like maybe these prophets are tapping into some kind of collective unconscious.
Maybe. But hold on, this time traveler guy, did he say anything about how this flooding happens? Like what causes it?
Not really. He was pretty vague on the details, just that it happens and it's bad, real bad. But get this, there's another prophet, a remote viewer, who claims to have seen pretty much the same thing. Massive flooding, but he's got his own twist on it.
A remote viewer? Okay, I've heard of those. They're like psychic spies, right? They can see things happening far away.
Something like that, yeah. Anyway, this remote viewer, he made these prophetic maps, and they show pretty much the whole world reshaped by rising sea levels.
The whole world. So not just the US and Japan.
Nope. He's got Europe almost entirely underwater and most of China gone too.
Wow, okay, that's pretty intense. But I'm curious, what about the US? Does his vision line up with the time travelers? Like, does he also see the East Coast getting hit the hardest?
That's the weird part, no. His maps actually focus on the West Coast, like California, Oregon, Washington, all underwater.
Huh. So it's like they're each seeing a different piece of the puzzle. East Coast, West Coast, Japan, Europe. It's all connected, but we're only getting these glimpses, these snapshots.
Right, like we're trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle, but we only have half the pieces. But here's another interesting thing, and this is real-world stuff, not just prophecies. Remember how we were talking about people maybe taking these predictions seriously? Well, there was this article in Forbes a while back about billionaires buying up land in high-altitude areas. Like they're preparing for some kind of, I don't know, apocalyptic flood scenario.
Seriously, billionaires prepping for the flood.
Yeah, and the article actually mentioned this remote viewers map specifically. Like maybe these guys are taking these prophecies as gospel and they're getting ready.
Okay. That's a little freaky. I mean, it makes you think, right? If these billionaires are taking it seriously, maybe we should too.
Maybe, maybe. But hey, let's move on to another prediction. This one comes from a British psychic, and it adds a little political flavor to the mix.
Oh, politics and prophecies. This should be good. What's he got to say?
Okay, so this guy, he's got a pretty good track record. He predicted Trump winning, Biden dropping out of the race, things like that.
Right.
So, yeah, he's got some credibility.
Okay, fair enough. So what's he seeing for 2025?
Well, he's focused on Japan again. He says there's going to be a major disaster there before March, maybe even as early as January. He describes this black cloud over Japan and countries on both sides of the Pacific shaking.
So more earthquakes, tsunamis, the usual stuff. But does he say anything about what causes this disaster?
He's a bit cryptic about it, but he mentions molten lava and how in European alchemy it represents purification. Like maybe this disaster is some kind of cleansing event, a forced rebirth for humanity.
Rebirth through disaster. That's a bit heavy. But I mean, I guess there's always hope, right? Even in the darkest times.
Yeah, I suppose. But this psychic, he's got other predictions too. Like he says China's payment system might get hacked in 2025, and that'll cause a massive crash.
A cyber attack taking down China's economy. That's pretty specific. And, you know, with all the tension in the world right now, it doesn't sound that far-fetched.
It definitely adds another layer to this whole 2025 prophecy thing. It's not just about natural disasters, it's about the human element too. Our actions, our choices, they all play a part in shaping the future.
True, true. But, okay, so you mentioned one more prophet, right? The one with the message from a higher power.
Oh yeah, this one's a doozy. Get ready for some divine intervention. All right, message from a higher power about 2025. This is getting serious.
Yeah, so this guy, he says he was deep in prayer, and suddenly he gets this vision from God, showing him what's going to happen in 2025.
A vision, huh? What did he see?
Okay, so it starts with this weird mix of images, like Times Square is completely empty and it's snowing, and then there's a gypsy carriage speeding through the snow, and then the moon is huge in the sky over Miami, and then lightning strikes the U.S.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. What's it all supposed to mean?
Well, he thinks it's all pointing towards some kind of, like, impending doom. Like, he says he heard God's voice saying, "You don't deserve it," over and over again.
You don't deserve it. Yikes, that's pretty ominous. But who's the you in this case?
He says it's America. Like, God's judging America and things are about to get really bad.
Okay, so what happens next in the vision?
Well, then it gets really scary. He sees a volcano erupting, and then a massive earthquake hits the West Coast, and then a tsunami just wipes out everything.
So like the West Coast is gone.
Pretty much. And it doesn't stop there. He sees a landslide in Alaska, and the tsunami, it even hits Hawaii and Tokyo.
Man, so it's like all these prophecies, they all point to this massive destruction, especially around the Pacific. It's kind of hard to ignore, you know?
It is. It is. And it's interesting, right? Like, we've got all these different prophets, different visions, but they all seem to converge on this idea of a major shift, a global catastrophe.
Right, like it's all part of the same story, but we're just seeing it from different angles. But in the end, it all comes down to interpretation, right? Like, are these prophecies literal predictions, or are they more symbolic, reflections of our own anxieties about the future?
That's the big question, isn't it? No one knows for sure. But either way, these prophecies, they make us think, they make us question, they make us wonder, what if?
Yeah, what if? What if we could actually see the future? What would we do with that knowledge? Would we try to change things, or would we just accept our fate?
Mm.
It's a lot to ponder, that's for sure.
It is, it is. And maybe, just maybe, by thinking about these possibilities, by confronting our fears, we can actually create a better future, you know?
Yeah.
Like if we know what could go wrong, maybe we can work to prevent it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe these prophecies aren't about predicting the future, but about inspiring us to change it.
Exactly. And even if we don't believe in prophecies, they can still teach us something, you know? They can make us more aware of the challenges we face, the choices we make, and the impact we have on the world.
Well said. Well, folks, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive into the world of 2025 prophecies. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it?
It has, it has. And who knows what the future holds? Maybe we'll look back at this conversation in a few years and laugh about how wrong we were. Or maybe we'll be saying, I told you so.
Only time will tell. But until then, keep those minds open, keep those eyes peeled, and keep exploring the mysteries of the universe. Thanks for joining us.